Hello and welcome to Vantage This Week, a show where we recap the highlights of the week gone by. Donald Trump has escalated his trade offensive. He has hit India with 50% tariffs. He blames it on Russian oil imports and he says there will be no talks. But New Delhi is not backing down. So what happens next? That's what we'll discuss. Apart from unleashing chaos, Trump is also planning to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin. A verbal clash has erupted between China and the Philippines, and at the center of this is a Firstpost interview. In India, a deadly cloudburst has swept away a Himalayan village. We'll bring you the details and also tell you why an AI researcher has turned down a $1.5 billion job offer. All this and more lined up. Let's get started. He's done it again. Donald Trump has targeted India yet again. Just 24 hours ago, he had threatened new tariffs on India, and now he's delivered. The 25% duty has been doubled, so tariffs on Indian goods will now stand at 50%. Trump has escalated his trade offensive, and this time India is squarely in his crosshairs. Earlier today, the US president signed an executive order. It says the same thing as the statements and social media posts, that India buys Russian oil, that is why it will face higher tariffs. That's essentially what Trump's executive order says. Now, these tariffs will take effect in September. And what happens to goods which are already in transit? They will be exempted. Let me put this in context. Does this new tariff apply to all Indian exports? The answer is no. There are some exemptions, like goods required for US national security, semiconductors and related electronics. Exports like pharma, steel and aluminium, they've all been exempted from the higher tariff because the US needs them. But beyond these goods, most Indian exports will be impacted. And remember, the US is India's largest export market. Bilateral trade last year crossed $130 billion. So this 50% import tax is not just a tariff, it's a penalty. And it's driven by politics, not trade. In fact, the order goes further. It also targets indirect imports. So if goods are routed through a third country, they will still face tariffs. There is no workaround. Basically, Donald Trump is turning up the heat. He's punishing India for buying Russian oil. And so far, New Delhi has stood its ground. A short while back, India issued a statement. It came from the Ministry of External Affairs. I have a copy of the statement. This is what it says. The United States has in recent days targeted India's oil imports from Russia. We have already made clear our position on these issues, including the fact that our imports are based on market factors and done with the overall objective of ensuring the energy security of 1.4 billion people of India. It is therefore extremely unfortunate that the US should choose to impose additional tariffs on India for actions that several other countries are also taking in their own national interest. We reiterate that these actions are unfair, unjustified, and unreasonable. India will take all actions necessary to protect its national interests. This is what the Indian statement has said. In an earlier statement, India had accused the United States and European Union of double standards. Remember, the EU continues to import energy from Russia. And despite Donald Trump's tough talk, America still buys uranium and fertilizers from Russia. Yesterday, Trump was confronted with this fact. Listen to how he responded.
India says that the US imports Russian uranium, chemicals, fertilizers, while criticizing their energy imports. Your response to that, sir?
I don't know anything about it. I'd have to check, but we'll get back to you on that. Yeah, please.
Well, that's Trump being Trump, dodging the tough questions and peddling falsehoods. The question at this moment is, what does India do next? There are two options. Option one, India could negotiate with the White House, and we know how Trump operates. He could announce a deal today, tear it up tomorrow, then return with a new set of demands. Plus, India would not want a deal that hurts its interests. And those issues, those sticking points have not changed. The other option is strategic diversification. Leverage India's broad network of partnerships, build long-term alternatives, and reduce dependence on unreliable markets like the United States of America. It won't be easy, it won't be quick, but it would be in the interest of India. And this is the path New Delhi seems to be taking. Which brings me to Russia. Despite the tariffs and the threats, India is doubling down on its ties with Russia. National Security Advisor Ajit Doval landed in Moscow today. This visit was planned months ago, but now it assumes greater importance. Doval met with senior Russian officials. He discussed a wide range of agenda items, from Russian oil to Russian defense supplies. He also discussed the S-400 defense system, the one that India is buying from Russia. India signed a $5.4 billion contract for the S-400 in the year 2018. 5 squadrons were ordered. 3 have been delivered and deployed. 2 systems are yet to be delivered. They could be fast-tracked after today's engagements. Now, this system, the S-400, has already proven crucial to India's defences. In May this year, during Operation Sindoor, the S-400 reinforced India's aerial defences against Pakistani missiles and drones. Some reports suggest that India could seek more S-400 units from Russia. So clearly, Trump's tariffs have had no impact on this relationship. Later this month, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar will travel to Russia. He will co-chair an important meeting. The conversation will likely address energy supplies, tech transfers, and strategic infrastructure. President Putin is expected to visit India as well. This could happen in the coming months. So Doval's visit, followed by Jaishankar's trip, could lay the groundwork for Putin's visit to India. And that's not all. India is opening a second front as well, with China.
And here
New Delhi made a major announcement today. Prime Minister Modi will travel to China later this month. He will attend the SCO summit. SCO stands for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. It's a grouping of Eurasian countries. Prime Minister Modi could meet President Xi Jinping of China on the sidelines of this summit. He had met the Chinese leader last year as well in Russia. Now, if the leaders meet again, expect them to send some signals. They may not address Trump's trade war directly, but it will shape their conversations. So join the dots. Doval's visit to Russia, Jaishankar's upcoming engagements in Moscow, and then Prime Minister Modi's visit to China. The message is consistent. India is asserting its right to choose, despite American pressure and in defiance of Trump's demands.
We had a tremendous deficit. Prime Minister Modi's a friend of mine. They sell a lot to us, but we don't buy from them. You know why? Because the tariff is so high.
भारत कभी भी समझौता नहीं करेगा और मैं जानता हूं व्यक्तिगत रूप से मुझे बहुत बड़ी कीमत चुकानी पड़ेगी, लेकिन मैं इसके लिए तैयार हूं।
The battle is heating up. Just months ago, the US and India looked like natural allies for the 21st century. Today, they are locked in a trade war and the gloves are off. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has responded to Donald Trump's trade blitz. He's not backing down. He said there will be no compromise, no matter the pressure.
हमारे लिए अपने किसानों का हित सर्वोच्च प्राथमिकता है। भारत अपने किसानों के, पशुपालकों के और मछुआरे भाई बहनों के हितों के साथ कभी भी समझौता नहीं करेगा और मैं जानता हूं व्यक्तिगत रूप से मुझे बहुत बड़ी कीमत चुकानी पड़ेगी, लेकिन मैं इसके लिए तैयार हूं। मेरे देश के किसानों के लिए, मेरे देश के मछुआरों के लिए, मेरे देश के पशुपालकों के लिए आज भारत तैयार है।
Prime Minister Modi did not mention Donald Trump by name, but he did not have to. The context was clear. Less than 24 hours back, Trump stepped up his offensive against India. He doubled tariffs from 25 to 50%, meaning Indian goods exported to the US will face a 50% tariff. This was a sharp and punitive move. Trump is going after India. And look at how this started. It started as a trade discussion. Trump wanted a sweeping deal. He wanted zero tariffs and zero barriers for American products. He wanted a one-way free market for American goods. India refused. So Trump shifted the goalposts. In recent days, he introduced a new angle. India's purchase of Russian oil. Trump has linked these new tariffs to Russian oil, and he's singling India out as other nations continue to buy from Russia.
Indian officials have said that there are other countries that are buying Russian oil.
It's okay.
Like China, for instance,
It's
buys
okay.
more.
Yeah.
Why are you singling India out for these additional
It's
sanctions?
only been 8 hours, so let's see what happens over the
More
next.
secondary sanctions
you're going
very
to see a lot
soon.
more.
So this is a taste of
You're
what's
going to
come.
see a lot more. You're
Mr.
going to see so much secondary sanctions.
Trump is yet to act on his latest threats. So far, there are no new tariffs on China or any other buyer of Russian energy, but India is in his crosshairs. The question is why? Is this just about the oil purchases? Or is it about the war in Ukraine and Trump's attempts to find leverage against Russia? Well, whatever the reason, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has drawn clear red lines today. His comments have made India's expectations and India's position quite clear. If this relationship is to be repaired, if ties are to return to normal, it won't happen with a one-sided deal, especially if it targets Indian farmers, fishermen, or livestock owners. The Indian Prime Minister named these three groups for a reason. They were at the center of India's trade negotiations with the United States. In fact, new reports have emerged. They reveal why the India-US talks broke down and what really happened at the negotiating table. India had the first mover's advantage. There were 5 rounds of trade talks. Some observers predicted a deal before the 1st of August, but then the negotiations collapsed. How did that happen? India was talking in good faith. It was prepared to offer significant concessions to the US, including reducing tariffs on industrial imports. And that would have covered around 40% of the goods that India buys from the US, 40%. Like I said, this was a significant concession. India was also prepared to lower duties on American cars and alcohol. It was open to buying more American energy as well as defense products. But just as a breakthrough appeared on the horizon, the goalposts shifted. Trump wanted more. The US started making sweeping demands. Agriculture remained a sticking point. After the 5th round of talks, most issues were resolved. But on the issue of farm imports, there was a clear gap. India refused to allow duty-free access to American agricultural products. American goods sold in India would still face a duty. That is the position that India took. It also refused access to US dairy products. Now, these sectors are politically sensitive in India. They employ millions of people, almost half of our workforce. Removing these tariffs on American goods can jeopardize Indian producers. So India refused to relent, and that became a deal breaker. Throughout this conversation, New Delhi remained flexible, especially after the US struck deals with Japan and the EU. India was looking for a similar deal, a 15% tariff rate. That's what New Delhi was eyeing. But that was a non-starter for Trump. He wanted more. And South Korea was cited as an example. They got a 15% tariff rate, but they had to commit to a $350 billion investment, plus higher energy imports from America and concessions on rice and beef. Now, just like farm products in India, rice and beef are highly sensitive and protected sectors for South Korea. Yet, Seoul relented. But India was not prepared to do so. And that is why the deal unraveled, because New Delhi could not offer what Trump wanted, and what New Delhi offered was not enough for Trump. So that's where we are right now. The deal is off, the tariffs are on. India is standing its ground. It has chosen strategic autonomy over succumbing to Trump's bullying. The breakdown of talks is a setback, not so much to India's position, but to whatever was left of America's credibility. It took years for successive US presidents to build trust with India, to reverse decades of distance. And Trump was part of that effort. But his tariff war is undoing all of it, and this time the damage may be far greater. What's below rock bottom? We'll find out soon, because that's where Donald Trump is taking India and the US. He's undoing years of hard work. He's taking this relationship back to the 20th century. And for what? Fake economics. Trump has announced 50% tariffs on India, 25% for trade issues, plus another 25% for buying Russian oil. Now, tariff, as you know, is a tax on goods entering a country. It is paid by the importer, in this case, the United States. But the importer passes on the cost to the consumer. Trump won't tell you that, but that's how it works. India's tariffs will kick in later this month. We have until August 27 to negotiate a truce to maybe avoid a crisis. Just one problem, though. Trump doesn't even want to talk. He was asked about possible negotiations with India. Listen to his response.
Just to follow up on the India tariffs, do you expect increased trade negotiations, since you've announced the 50% tariff?
No, not until we get it resolved.
So I guess this is the art of the deal. Set red lines, refuse talks, burn bridges, and call it a win. Meanwhile, India is being proactive. This is where strategic autonomy is so important. We are not at the mercy of one country, so we can afford to resist. Look at Japan or South Korea or Europe. All of them folded in front of Donald Trump, but India has not. The question is, what's the next move? Well, New Delhi is not alone. A few other countries are also resisting Trump, like Brazil and China. It looks like India is banding up with them. Yesterday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi received a phone call from Brazil's leader, President Lula da Silva. Both of them agreed to strengthen ties on trade, on defense, on energy, and on technology. They promised to take the relationship to new heights. Now, there is context here. Trump has slapped 50% tariffs on Brazil as well. He wanted President Lula to call him and negotiate a deal, but Lula refused. He said he would call Indian Prime Minister Modi instead.
There is no articulation in the BRICS, but there will be. Tomorrow, I will call President Modi, then I will call President Xi Jinping, then I will call other presidents, and I'm going to try to discuss with them about how each one is doing in this situation, what the implications are for each country, so we can make a decision.
Modi has also invited Lula to India. He is expected to visit sometime next year. Then you have China. Their envoy to India has jumped to New Delhi's defense. Look at what he posted on social media. I'm quoting, "Give the bully an inch, he will take a mile." The bully being Donald Trump. China state media is also on the job. They're using Indian proverbs to make their case. Let me quote again. As a Hindu proverb goes, help your brother's boat across and your own will reach the shore. A healthy China-India relationship brings positive spillover effects to the region and the world. The sentiment is not new. Think back to April. Donald Trump was unveiling his tariff list, and Xi Jinping wrote a letter to India's president. He said the dragon and the elephant must work together. Well, he's getting his wish. Reports say Prime Minister Modi will travel to China by the end of August. He will attend the SCO summit in Tianjin. If confirmed, it would be the first trip in 7 years, a major milestone in the reset. And finally, you've got Russia. President Putin will be traveling to India. He is expected to visit towards the end of the year. It will be his first India trip since the Ukraine war. Again, a very symbolic move. Trump is attacking India over Russian oil, yet India is preparing to host Russian President Putin. In fact, like I said, Prime Minister Modi spoke to President Putin today. He promised to deepen India's special relationship with Moscow. So the message from New Delhi is quite clear. We have options. We have good options. All these countries are also part of the BRICS bloc. We did not mention South Africa here, but they too face pressure from Donald Trump. So could the BRICS push back together? President Lula of Brazil already is proposing a joint response. On paper, it ticks all the boxes. BRICS countries make up 56% of the global population. India and China alone make up 1/3. So together, they can absorb some of the impact, maybe buy some of the exports meant for America. But as always, the question is unity. Can they create a common policy or not? The past does not offer a lot of confidence, but let's see how it unfolds. As for India, the concern is long-term because this goes beyond just exports or tariffs. This is about a world view. America wants to keep dominating geopolitics. They see India as a means to contain China. That's America's worldview. Beijing says it wants a multipolar world, but their actions suggest that they want to replace America. Meanwhile, India's position is clear. We don't want allies, we don't want superpowers, we just want to grow and prosper. No camps, only strategic autonomy. It won't be easy to navigate this world with this world view. But India must find a way. Because the last few weeks have confirmed the ultimate truth in geopolitics. Nobody is your friend.
Free, balanced, fair trade.
Tariffs are not just numbers on a spreadsheet or a few extra dollars at customs or a bump in the import bill. They're economic earthquakes with aftershocks that shake geopolitics. And Donald Trump's latest trade blitz, it has triggered a chain reaction, sending ripples far beyond trade. Take Spain, for example. They were eyeing the F-35 fighter jet. It's the crown jewel of the American defense giant Lockheed Martin. On paper, it's a technological marvel, a fifth-generation stealth fighter jet, F-35. In 2023, Madrid even set aside $7 billion to replace its aging fleet. Talks were on, interest was high, and then nothing. Spain walked away. And now it is looking at the Eurofighter instead. The reason? Officially, it's about European defense integration, but unofficially, it's Donald Trump. Why buy American jets when America is taxing the world to death? And it's not just Spain. Switzerland got slammed with 39% tariffs. Their president flew to Washington to cut a deal. Trump did not even meet her. She returned home empty-handed, and now Bern is furious. Swiss politicians want to cancel a $9 billion order, again for F-35 jets. 36 F-35 jets, $9 billion. And they're all asking the same question. Why hand billions to a country that just hit us with a trade bat? Canada's having the same debate. It has a $14 billion F-35 deal on the books. Officially, the review was about rising costs. Unofficially, Prime Minister Mark Carney vowed to stand up to Washington. Ottawa's first 16 jets are locked in. There is no backing out there. But the next 72, that's where the fight begins. There were similar reports in India too about New Delhi putting arms purchases from the US on hold, but officials have denied these reports. They've called them, and I'm quoting, fabricated. Having said that, India has been trying to diversify for some time. Take fighter jet engines, for example. India signed a deal with America's GE, that's General Electric. This was a deal for fighter jet engines. The first delivery was supposed to be in 2023, but GE delivered them only in 2025. India even issued penalties, and now it is looking beyond the US, it seems. India is in talks with other nations to co-develop fighter jet engines, the likes of Japan, France, and the UK. It may not be connected to the trade war, but it is a signal that there are always other options. And tariffs are not just bruising defense sales. Entire sectors are taking hits. Take fashion and footwear, for example. Nike, Levi's, and Gap. They rely heavily on Asian manufacturing hubs. They are now facing higher US tariffs, and that means supply chains are scrambling. Then there is tech and electronics. Apple and Nvidia have dodged the worst. They have exemptions, but Trump warns that those breaks are temporary. The exemptions are temporary, and that means entire supply chains are on the edge. The US auto industry could also be collateral damage. Tariffs will cause prices to rise. In fact, the auto industry could take a $12 billion hit, all because of this trade war. It could be the worst since the Wuhan virus pandemic. So while Trump has framed these tariffs as leverage, as a way to strong-arm trade partners into better deals, what's unfolding looks less like a negotiation and more like a decoupling. Allies are seeing defense alternatives, supply chains are rerouting, Washington risks becoming a less reliable partner, both in trade and security. And that's the biggest irony here. Military deals have often been Washington's ace card, especially during trade disputes. But now they're the first casualties in Trump's trade war. And this is just the opening round. The next could be uglier because once countries wean off from the US, they won't just come back when the tariffs go away. The damage becomes permanent. So Trump's tariffs may end up being his biggest gifts to Washington's competitors.
It's a big day.
It's finally set to happen. No more secret phone calls, no more messenger diplomacy. Donald Trump is set to meet Vladimir Putin, their first ever meeting since Trump's first term. Also, the first presidential meet since the Ukraine war. It could happen as soon as next week. The announcement came from the Kremlin. They are working out some of the key details like the agenda, the location, and the optics. Listen in.
Speaking about the Ukrainian matters, at the suggestion of the American side, an agreement was essentially reached to hold a bilateral meeting at the highest level in the coming days. That is, a meeting between President Vladimir Putin and President Donald Trump.
Now, this is big news. The last US-Russia summit was in 2021. That's when Joe Biden met Putin in Switzerland. And then Russia invaded Ukraine, and ties plunged to rock bottom. When Trump came to office, he slowly revived it. First phone calls, then ministerial meetings, and now finally the big one, a sit-down between Trump and Putin. How exactly did both sides agree to this, and what are they hoping to achieve? Let's look at the build-up first. Trump had promised to end the war in 24 hours. When he couldn't, he began losing patience. He criticized Russian attacks. He gave weapons to Ukraine. Then last week, he issued an ultimatum to Moscow, end the war by August 8th or face sanctions. Soon after, he also made a nuclear threat. Trump announced that he was moving nuclear submarines near Russia. He was posturing before talks. Because this week, Trump dispatched his special envoy to Moscow, his man Friday, Steve Witkoff. This was Witkoff's fifth trip in 2025, fifth. Yesterday, he had a long meeting with Putin, reports say around 3 hours long. In this meeting, Witkoff made a proposal, a trilateral summit between Putin, Zelensky and Trump, but Putin rejected it. Afterwards, Trump made a statement in Washington. He said there was no breakthrough in Moscow, but he hinted at a meeting with Putin.
What was the breakthrough today? Did Vladimir Putin make some kind of concession that he hasn't been willing to make before?
I don't call it a breakthrough. I mean, we've been working on this a long time. There are thousands of young people dying, mostly soldiers, but also, missiles being hit into Kiev and other places. We had some very good talks with President Putin today, and there's a very good chance that we could be ending the round, ending the end of that road. That road was long and continues to be long, but there's a good chance that there will be a meeting very soon.
So yesterday, the US proposed a trilateral. Today, we hear of a bilateral. Is this some middle ground? Maybe Putin said no to the meeting with Zelensky, but he agreed to a summit with Trump. At this point, we can only speculate. Whatever the reason, the Ukrainians are quite happy. Zelensky says Russia seems more open to a truce.
We discussed what was said in Moscow. It appears that Russia is now more inclined to consider a ceasefire. The pressure on them is working. But the main thing is to make sure they don't deceive anyone in the details, neither us nor the United States.
Now, Now, two questions remain. Where will they meet and what will they discuss? In the past, such summits have happened in neutral countries. In 2018, Trump met Putin in Finland. Back then, Finland was a neutral country. But today, Finland is a part of NATO. In 2021, the meeting happened in Switzerland. The Swiss are still neutral, but they have imposed sanctions on Russia, which leaves the Gulf nations. All of them have close ties with both Russia and the US. In fact, the UAE's president is visiting Moscow as we speak. Putin suggested that his country could play host.
Your aide said the meeting was likely to be held next week. But where? Could you at least hint at this place?
We have a lot of friends that are ready to help us organize such an event. Here is one of our friends, the President of the United Arab Emirates. I think we will decide, but this could be one of the suitable venues.
Another possibility is Turkey, or who knows, maybe it will be a wild card. What matters is not the location, what matters is the agenda. What will both men be looking to achieve? Trump will be betting on personally persuading Putin. He has spoken about it in the past. Trump feels that he must be at the table if the war is to end.
Nothing's going to happen until Putin and I get together, okay? And obviously he wasn't going to go. He was going to go, but he thought I was going to go. He wasn't going if I wasn't there. And I don't believe anything's going to happen, whether you like it or not, until he and I get together. But we're going to have to get it solved because too many people are dying.
Well, that is Trump's best case scenario. He convinces Putin to end the war. And what about the other side? Just the optics is a big victory for Putin. Europe thinks they have managed to isolate Russia, but next week Putin will be shaking hands with Europe's top ally. Certainly not isolation. As for the talks, Putin will have different goals. Best case scenario, he wins over Trump. The US president goes back to abandoning Ukraine, no aid, no sanctions. If he cannot achieve that, Putin may look to buy time. Trump's ceasefire deadline is tomorrow. After that, the US may target Russia's trading partners. They have already tariffed India. Other partners could be next. And that's the risk with Trump. Putin knew that Joe Biden would never violate some red lines. It took him 2 years to allow Ukraine to strike deep inside Russia. But with Trump, there are no red lines. Whatever the outcome, these talks are a welcome move. Any step to end the war is good. Any step to keep communication lines open is also good. We'll be tracking this summit closely. It's a war of words between China and the Philippines. Beijing is threatening Manila, but Manila is refusing to back down. At the center of it, the Filipino president's interview to us, to Firstpost. I'm sure you've caught snippets of it. President Marcos Jr. was in India for a state visit this week. He sat down with us for an interview on Wednesday. We covered a lot of topics, and one of them has triggered a major controversy. Listen to this first. Experts fear that Beijing will invade Taiwan before the end of this decade. If that were to happen while you're still in power, would you be open to allowing the US use resources and bases in the Philippines to defend Taiwan, or would you rather stay out of it?
To be very practical about it, if there is a confrontation over Taiwan between China and the United States, there is no way that the Philippines can stay out of it, simply because of our physical geographic location. So if you think about it, if there is an all-out war, then we will be drawn into it. And I assure you with the greatest hesitation, but we will have to defend our territory and our sovereignty.
I'll quickly recap that for you. We asked President Marcos about Taiwan. If China invaded, what would he do? Would he let the Americans use Filipino bases to defend Taiwan, or would he stay out? Marcos said it would be impossible to stay out, and he gave us reasons. Number one, the proximity. Look how close Taiwan and the Philippines are. The shortest distance is just 250 kilometers, and the president said a short 40-minute flight. Reason number two, the large Filipino community in Taiwan, some 200,000 of them live on the island. President Marcos said he would try to get those people out, and for that he will have to send his soldiers in. These comments have not gone down well in Beijing. As you know, China considers Taiwan as part of its territory, Chinese territory. The plan is to eventually retake the island, perhaps using force. So China has lodged a protest against Manila. Listen to what the Chinese Foreign Ministry said.
The Philippines has kept making wrong and provocative remarks and actions, kept fudging and hollowing out the One China principle, and kept harming the China-Philippines relations. It needs to be further stressed that near geographic location and a large amount of Filipinos in Taiwan should not be used as pretexts to interfere in the internal and sovereign affairs of other countries. We urge the Philippines to earnestly abide by the One China principle and refrain from playing with fire on issues bearing on China's core interests.
Strong words there. China says Marcos is playing with fire. They're asking him to stay out of Taiwan, but Manila is not backing down. They have responded to China's statement. Let me quote from what the Philippines has said. The president reiterated the importance of peace and stability in Taiwan. The Philippines upholds its One China policy and adopts a policy of non-interference in China's internal affairs. At the same time, the Philippines has consistently advocated for dialogue, regional stability, and peaceful settlement of differences. There are two flashpoints here. The first is bilateral. China and the Philippines have a territory dispute. Beijing claims most of the South China Sea, even the sovereign waters of Manila, the West Philippine Sea. International courts have ruled in the Philippines' favor, but China refuses to accept. It regularly sends ships into disputed waters. Sometimes these ships sail right up to Manila's economic zones. And of late, this has led to clashes. We've seen China firing water cannons at Filipino ships. President Marcos addressed that issue too. He also promised to not give up an inch of sovereign land. Multiple close shaves between Chinese and Filipino vessels in recent past, with the Chinese ships also firing water cannons at Filipino ships. Are you worried that this may escalate into a full-blown crisis, that a small misunderstanding may blow up into something much bigger?
That is precisely what we are worried about.
Your recent State of the Nation address is coming under a lot of scrutiny. In last year's speech, you promised to not yield even an inch of Philippine land in disputed areas. This year, your statement did not make an explicit mention of that, of the West Philippine Sea, but you focused more on non-alignment on Manila's part. Would you say you watered down your statement? Did you, and why?
No, I did not. You're the second person to ask me that. Let me say it again. The Philippines will not cede 1 square inch of our territory. We will not give up the exercise of our sovereign rights.
So that's the bilateral flashpoint. The second is Taiwan. If war breaks out, the U.S. will need regional allies. They will look to Manila. The U.S. is a treaty ally of the Philippines. Washington is permitted to use Filipino bases and land. Already, there are hundreds of American soldiers in the Philippines. Reports say the country also hosts U.S. missiles. So if there is war, the U.S. will turn to Manila, which is why China is angry. If you keep these flashpoints aside, everything is great. China is Manila's largest trading partner. 25% of their imports come from China. President Marcos also alluded to this. He said the relationship was fine, except for the disputes. But he was also realistic about it. He admitted that these disputes would not disappear overnight. In fact, they're likely to get worse. The Philippines is focused on creating a coalition in the region. They want to bring China's rivals together. One example of that is a Quad. It's a group of 4 Indo-Pacific countries: the Philippines, Japan, Australia, and the US. It's a bit different from the Quad. The Quad is very shy about its security goals, but the Quad is not. In fact, the S in Quad stands for security. As for China, we do not get the meltdown. President Marcos was responding to a hypothetical situation. If China invades, then Manila will get dragged in. So it seems like the solution is quite simple. Do not invade. Now let's shift our attention to northern India, where an entire town was swept away in the Himalayas. There was a massive cloudburst in Uttarkashi, a district in the Indian state of Uttarakhand. The cloudburst triggered flash floods and unleashed a deluge down the hill. Take a look. You can hear the locals screaming in the videos. They had no prior warning, no time to run or find shelter. At least 2 cloudbursts have been reported from this area in less than 24 hours. There are many dramatic videos. They show muddy waves crashing through the streets and sweeping away shops, homes and buildings. At least 4 people are dead, but dozens are feared trapped under the debris. Rescue teams are at the site, including teams from the army and the disaster response forces. They have a tough challenge on their hands. Connectivity to the flood-hit area is poor, and more rain is predicted in the coming days. Here's what we know so far.
This was the moment when the raging floodwaters tore through everything in sight. Homes, shops, hotels, lives, all swallowed in seconds. This is Dharali, a popular tourist destination in the northern Indian state of Uttarakhand. It's known for its mountain views and resorts. Now, it's been reduced to debris and devastation. The time was 1:30 p.m. The Kheer Ganga river, swollen by relentless rains, turned violent. Tons of muddy water thundered down the slopes. It swept across roads. It engulfed buildings and buried entire shops. Eyewitnesses say the surge came without warning. There was no time to run, no time to save anything. Within seconds, everything was gone. Hours later, a second cloudburst was reported. It happened just kilometers away, in Sukitop near Dharali. There could be dozens still trapped under the debris. Among the structures caught in the deluge was the ancient Kalp Kedar temple. Locals believe it has been severely damaged. It now lies beneath thick layers of slush, its condition still unknown. Help is on its way, but the path isn't easy. Dharali lies in a remote corner of the Uttarkashi district in Uttarakhand. Access is difficult, connectivity is poor, and the rains haven't stopped. District officials say communication lines are patchy. Rescue workers are battling not just the debris, but also the weather. Despite the challenges, the response has been swift. Personnel from the Indian Army and the Indo-Tibetan Border Police, or ITBP, are on the ground. They were among the first to reach Dharali. They are pulling out survivors, assessing damage, and looking for anyone still trapped. The village lies just 2 kilometers from the Harsil village. It's home to a major army base, and it's a well-known tourist town. The hope is this proximity will help. The support will be fast and swift, and the injured will get the aid they need. India's top leadership has taken note as well. Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke to Uttarakhand's Chief Minister. He's promised full support. He posted on X, saying, "I express my condolences to the people affected by the tragedy in Dharali. No stone is being left unturned in providing assistance." Union Home Minister Amit Shah also stepped in. He confirmed that 3 ITBP teams are already on site and 4 NDRF teams have been dispatched.
सभी लोगों को सूचित किया जाता है गंगा नदी का जलस्तर लगातार तीव्र गति से बढ़ रहा है.
NDRF stands for National Disaster Response Force. This is a specialized force to handle both natural and man-made disasters. The hours ahead are critical. The ground is unstable. The weather officials are forecasting more rain, and the terrain is dangerous. This is no ordinary disaster. It's a challenge of access, and it would require more coordination at scale.
Now let's talk about a controversy brewing in Britain. India's former colonizer is demanding more dues, not reparations, not a return of the looted treasures. It has delivered a parking bill to the Indian mission in London. The UK says the Indian mission owes £9 million. What for? A fee called the congestion charge. It's £15 a day for any vehicle that enters central London. On paper, it's a tax that applies to everyone. But when it comes to diplomats, the rules are different. Under international law, diplomats do not pay taxes. That's what Article 34 of the Vienna Convention says. And India argues that this is a tax, not a service fee. In fact, India is not the only one. Britain wants to collect millions from other countries too. As of 2024, the US owes at least £15 million, Japan owes 10, and they've both refused to pay, just like India. Our next report has more.
£9.1 million. That's the bill. According to Britain, this is what India owes for driving diplomatic vehicles through central London. For not paying what's called the congestion charge. It is £15 a day. It is applied to any vehicle entering designated zones in London. But when it comes to diplomatic missions, the rules aren't that simple. India believes the UK is trying to charge a tax. Under international rules, diplomats are exempt from paying taxes. That's what Article 34 of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations states. It's a treaty the UK signed in 1961. So this isn't about paying or not paying. It's about definition of the congestion charge. Is this a user fee like parking? Or is it a mandatory tax, which the state can collect? India says it's the latter. So does the US. So does Japan. These are 3 of the world's biggest democracies. And they are all on the same side. But Transport for London, or TfL, disagrees. They say, this isn't a tax. It's a charge for a service. And that means diplomats must pay. TfL wrote to India's High Commission twice. They said there is no legal ground for exemption. But here's the question. Is this really about traffic? Or is it just a diplomatic flex? Because if this is about enforcement, Britain's got bigger problems. According to TfL, the US Embassy in London owes £15 million. A 2024 report called it the worst offender among diplomatic missions. The US bill goes back over a decade. Japan is next, owing over £10 million. India follows with around £9 million. Then comes Nigeria, China, and Russia. In total, embassies in London owe more than £143 million. The charge itself is simple. £15 a day. It applies to most vehicles entering central London, between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays, and from noon to 6 p.m. on weekends and holidays. But when diplomatic law is clear, why are these bills being sent? Remember, this comes just months after India and the UK sealed a trade agreement, a deal that took years to negotiate, and one that's being touted as a new chapter in India-UK ties. But stories like these undermine that trust. Britain cannot lecture on diplomatic conduct while ignoring global norms it helped shape. And if we're talking about unpaid dues, why not talk about what Britain still owes India? It extracted wealth, worth trillions of dollars, after nearly 200 years of colonial rule. From resources to textiles, from labor to even gold. According to experts, the British Empire drained $45 trillion from India. That's not symbolic. That's real economic loss. And not a penny has ever been returned. Beyond the money, the Kohinoor still sits in the British Crown. Indian artifacts still fill British museums. And those colonial legacies? They still shape trade rules today. So if Britain wants to talk about unpaid dues, it might want to look inward first.
What would you do if you were offered $1.5 billion for a job? 1.5 billion with a B. I know what most of you are thinking. You would scream, call your mom, say yes even before they finish the sentence. Because who turns down a deal like that? Well, someone just did. His name is Andrew Tulloch. He is an AI researcher, and recently Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg offered him a job that could have been worth up to $1.5 billion over 6 years. But Tulloch said, no thanks. Why did he do that? Well, that's what we'll tell you tonight. Our story begins with Meera Murati. She was the Chief Technological Officer of OpenAI. When Sam Altman was removed, she took his place. She became the interim CEO of OpenAI. This was for a very short while. Last year, Meera Murati left OpenAI, and this year she formed her own AI startup. It's called Thinking Machines Lab. Andrew Tulloch is a co-founder. A few months ago, Mark Zuckerberg reached out to Meera Murati. Meta has been revamping its AI team. They've been looking for AI researchers, so Zuckerberg made Murati an offer. He would buy her new startup. Murati refused. Then Meta reached out to Andrew Tulloch, and they made this eye-watering offer of $1.5 billion. I'm sure all of you are curious. What does an offer like this even look like? As I said, it's not for 1 year. It's $1.5 billion over 6 years. So you can do the math. That's around $250 million a year. And not all of this is in cash. This is not $1.5 billion as cash in hand. This includes stock options and performance bonuses. So if Meta soars, Tulloch would be richer. If it crashes, he would be left with far less. That was the offer. And even if Tulloch gets $100 million in hand, it's still a lot of money. So why did he say no? For multiple reasons. The first one, believe it or not, is mission, or so they say. Yes, money is important, but AI researchers often believe that the mission is bigger, that they're working on something big, almost like the Manhattan Project, the one that created the atom bomb. Also, the Thinking Lab Machines is worth $12 billion. Investors are pouring billions into the startup, and no one knows why. What they're building is apparently a secret and a well-guarded one. So that's one reason. The second one is culture. Places like OpenAI and Thinking Machines are deeply idealistic. They're flat structured. Everyone gets a say. Meta, on the other hand, is very different. There's a lot of office politics. Reports talk about ego clashes. So for some AI researchers, it's not a conducive environment. And the last factor is fatigue. Tulloch is not Zuckerberg's only target. He has tried to poach so many employees from the tiny startup that this feels less like a job offer and more like a siege. And that did not sit right with Tulloch. In fact, this is a remarkable episode, not just because of the pay package and the fact that it was rejected, but because of what it tells you about the AI ecosystem. Top talent is in short supply. There are only about 70 to 80 people in Silicon Valley, and there's a bidding war over them. They're getting contracts like top athletes. They have a lot of fan following. There are relentless recruitment campaigns. I guess all that's left is a Netflix documentary offer. Of course, none of this is new. In the early 2000s, networking engineers were gods. Then came mobile app developers. Now it's AI PhDs. And yet, this time feels a little different. Not because of the big money, but because of the high stakes. These engineers are not just building search engines, they're creating the most powerful technology humanity has ever imagined. Artificial General Intelligence, AGI. So can the AI world justify these salaries? Maybe they can. Whoever builds AGI first will control the world. If an AI researcher helps unlock that, then $1.5 billion might actually be cheap. Having said that, we are still years, if not a decade away from AGI. The AI world is bleeding money. Tangible profits are still a myth. Yet there's no stopping these companies. They will spend whatever it takes to win, because the prize this time is history. It's a big day for Indian cricket. The men's team narrowly defeated England in London. Nobody expected us to win today, so the result came as a pleasant surprise. But it has also triggered a lot of online banter, mostly thanks to the timing. August is when India broke away from British rule, and today is August 4th. Another August, another Indian victory over the Brits. The jokes came flooding in.
Everybody wants to know what I would do if I didn't win. I guess we'll never know.
Now, bowler!
Yeah! We got that!
Guys, we have this starting in. India's going to